Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome to our Friday lunchtime learning session. How are you all? I hope you've all had a good week and you're ready to hear a very interesting discussion with Marlene Outrim, who is our guest today. Welcome, Marlene. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, it's great, and I'm very honoured to be here, I think.
Oh, that's so nice. I love your background. I was just saying before, Marlene has collects art and has this wonderful, wonderful piece of art behind her. So, Marlene, you are the author of a fantastic book called Cascading Your Wealth, How to Build a Family Wealth Plan for the Next Generation, which is obviously something we all have an interest in. And I think it's important to say at the start that no matter how big or small your wealth is, that what you're all about is planning and getting things optimized for us and our family's best interest. Does that sort of summarize?
Yes, really. It's just putting your house in order. That's how I like to think of it. You know, you dot the I's and cross the T's, but you make sure everything's in order. And it's amazing how people don't do that. Lots of reasons why. It could just be they're so busy, they haven't got the time and inclination, or they're not sure how to go about it, or they just procrastinate. They just put it off to another day and it never gets done.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's yeah. I think I'm probably guilty of all of those. But Marlene, let's just talk about your own background. So you've been a financial planner for over 30 years. So you're obviously very good at this. And also, I must say, you've been a former president of the Institute of Financial Planning. You're the founder and owner of, is it Unique UNIQ Family Wealth, which is a financial planning firm that helps families and individuals to lead more fulfilling and financially secure lives. And you're also the author of another book called Boomers Redefining Retirement. So lots of interesting stuff there. So how did you get into this? Where did you start your business journey?
Well, actually, it's a bit strange, but I started it as a probation officer.
Oh, really? How interesting.
And everybody says, well, that was strangely, but actually it's not. So I was a probation officer for 13 years and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a very demanding job, but I did quite a lot of things, to like setting up family holidays for families who had never been on holiday.
Wow.
I ran all sorts of groups, but I was trained very, very well. We're sponsored by the Home Office, and I was trained in family therapy, transactional analysis, marital studies, and also what a lot of people don't realize is the probation service then had responsibility for divorce and separating couples and children, adoption. So we were acted as guardian ad litem. We did reports for the court. So we did a whole range of things, and I was taught so many skills, and during that period that lent themselves quite easily to being a financial planner. So the job was changing to being more policing, and I was approaching 40, and I thought, I really don't want to be ending my life, my career as a probation officer. So I looked around, and I really wanted to work for myself, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So financial services were advertising a lot, come and work and build up your own business. So I went along, I got an interview, and I got in with a very well-known firm. And I was a tied agent with that firm. And I have to say, I thought it was dreadful. I thought, what have I done? I've left a professional career. I was respected by the legal and the judiciary profession. And here I was selling products and told to sell products in a particular way. And I was thinking about getting out of it when I joined an independent financial advisor after about 18 months. And that gave me a freedom. I thought, well, I can choose the products that I promote to my clients. And from then on, I got into financial independence. I've got an accountancy background. I forgot to say, I was studying, before I became a probation officer, I was studying accountancy and looking to be a chartered secretary and administrator, company secretary, but decided I wanted to work with people. So I had that background, and I used to go and see people and try and do cash flows on the back of a fag packet sort of thing. And then somebody introduced me to financial planning, to one of the founders of financial planning, by which time I'd broken away from the IFA after about another 18 months and set up my own practice. And you could do it quite easily through a network. And I heard a tape by one of these founders, Paul Etheridge, and he had an agenda at his meeting and went through this very professionally. And I thought, I want my meetings to be like that. And so I got involved with the Institute of Financial Planning, which is where financial planning was being promoted. And it was a very small institute. But after a few years, I got on the board and I was elected to be president. And to me, it's the only way of giving people financial advice. And yet there are still hundreds, if not thousands, of advisors who go out there and just sell products. I'm not saying they don't do a very good job, they probably do. But if you want your clients to really get something out of their lives and their wealth, then this is the one way of doing it. And so I've promoted it. I've been a big advocate of financial planning. And people who, somebody who recently joined us who was an advisor with Prudential, she said, I can't believe that we're not all working this way.
Well, that's really interesting, because I suppose if you've, I mean, I'm sure we've all at some stage probably interacted with a financial planner who may have contacted us with a view to selling us services. So would you suggest that that you know, you don't go with those sorts of services, that you look elsewhere for financial planning advice?
I would always look for somebody who's a certified financial planner.
Right.
It's an international qualification, and it shows they've actually qualified in knowing how to do financial planning properly. It's an international qualification, and it's overseen by the Financial Planning Standards Boards in America. And they lay down the 6 steps of financial planning, which every good financial planner will follow. Now, there are lots of lifestyle financial planners out there now, and there are lots of advisors who are waking up to this way of working. And I just think, I've been doing this since 1992. Why are you only just waking up?
Yeah.
Working this way? And you get very loyal clients. I sold my first business in 2007 and worked with the company who bought us for 5 years. And after 5 years, they were having financial problems, so I decided to leave. And the majority of my clients came with me because they said, we are with you, not the company. So some of my clients have been with me for over 20 years.
Well, that's certainly a testament, isn't it?
Yes, because of the way that I work.
Yeah. So Marlene, let's sort of start at the beginning, and let's assume that most people haven't done what they probably should have done in your, to financially plan properly. So what decisions do you need to take, and when, in order to get the intergenerational planning thing off the ground? Where do you need to start? What do you need to do?
Well, you need to start with is, what is it you want to do with your life? Now, you know, there must be a number of people who are listening today who at the beginning of each year write down their goals, maybe 10-year, 5-year, 3 years and 1 year. If they're not, they should be writing down their goals, because it's something I've always done. And it's surprising, if you write them down, you can actually achieve them. If they're in your head, they sort of dissipate, they go somewhere. So writing down your goals is very important. So if you've got some goals and you think about, well, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? I mean, I know it's a cliche, but you've only got one life. So spend it well. Are you doing things in your life that you don't enjoy, that you don't want to do, that are causing you stress? You know, think about. So that's the first step. What is it you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Do you want to, could be, I'd just like to have a house abroad. I'd just like to buy my own house. I'd like to have a new car. I'd like to get the children into private education or through university. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be riding wild horses on a beach, which is, at dusk, which may be very nice, but it can be something very mundane like that. But at least think about, how is it you want to lead the rest of your life? That's the very, very first thing you've got to think about.
That's really interesting, because in fact, when you start, then it's not about the money, it's about you and your goals and what matters to you. And is it very much about you yourself, rather than that you start with, rather than thinking about, you know, your children or your grandchildren or whatever?
Well, we tend to see, if people have a spouse or a partner, we will see couples.
Right.
So they will work this out together.
Yeah.
And if they have children or parents still living or grandparents, usually, and I say this, even if I see a single person, family will come into it somewhere. And you get a feel of people's values about their family, how they feel about their family, if you ask the right questions. And then you get a sense of what is important to them, and you can help them work with that.
Right. And as you say, it's not necessarily, not everybody has children, so it's not necessarily, I mean, family in the broadest sense as well.
That's right, because you're from a family. You're part of a family.
Yes, of course. And you know, many people talk about their friends as the family they've chosen.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So, okay, so we start with your own goals, or you and your partner's goals for the rest of your life, or as far ahead as you can see. I mean, does it matter at what age you start this? Should you start really young, like, you know, I don't know, when you first start work, or does it matter if you haven't done anything about it and you're already retiring? Is there an ideal time to start this process?
Not really. Obviously, when you start work, it can be important if you are thinking, well, I'd like to buy a house at some stage, or I'd like to travel, or I'd like to give up work for take a sabbatical or something like that. Then you've got to plan for it. So if somebody came to me a few years ago and they wanted to do some pension planning, and then when I got to them to talk about what they wanted to achieve, it was they wanted to buy a property. So that was the thing they had to focus on before they could think about the pension planning.
Right.
And
yeah.
He was only in his late 20s.
Oh, right. Yeah. Young, very young.
Yeah.
So what about the other end of the scale? What happens if you've done no financial planning and, you know, you're getting on a bit, maybe even kind of retiring? What if you know, can you start from there? Is it too late?
You can start anytime, but obviously the sooner the better, because you can put plans in place and you can have a track to run on and you can follow that. And if things change, you can amend your plan.
Right.
But it's never too late just to try and do something. So, you know, we are advising people in their late 20s, 30s, because we have clients, older children, and we're advising clients' parents who are in their late 80s, 90s, aunts and uncles who are in care homes. We're doing the planning for them. So, you know, it doesn't matter what age, we can usually help them in some way.
That's good to know. So that's the first step, your own goals, the sort of broader picture. Then what comes next? How do you make sure you have a secure financial future?
Well, we have a look at what you've got and what you own, what assets you have, and we can put all of those into the pot. So I say to the client, we look at all the income we think you're going to earn throughout your lifetime. Now, the younger you are, the more difficult that process might be, because you may go on and you may get promotion. But if we can work on something, and then we'll have a conversation about, well, what are your career ambitions? Do you see yourself staying in this position? What are your plans for that? So we can open up all sorts of discussions about what people want to do. And then we can see how they're spending their money. So we get them to fill in a very detailed expenditure questionnaire. And for some people, this is a bit of a nightmare, because they've not really approached it in that way. And for other people, most people say, actually, it was a really good exercise to do, because it gives them a feel of what and where they're spending their money on, and whether there's any waste.
Right. Do people get quite shocked when they carry out this exercise? Do they not realize how much they're spending on things they don't need to spend? Or
Yeah, some do, but I ask them to be generous. And if they're couples, I ask who looks after the money and can fill this in more easily. Sometimes we have a little bit of a joke about what people are spending on clothing and footwear. Men spend literally nothing, and I always challenge it. And I always ask the women, are you sure that's the right amount of money? So we do challenge things like, are you spending enough on holidays? Have you included everything? Having your hair done, your nails done? It's surprising how it all mounts up. So yes, it's a very detailed expenditure. So we want to know, or we want you to know, what the cost of your standard of living is.
Right.
And then we can put the assets in, any savings, whether they've got property. Then we put growth rates in, average rates of inflation, and we project that all until their age 100. So we say, if you do nothing, this is what will happen. So you say you want to buy a house in 5 years' time. The cash flow will show us whether you've got enough money to do that, and what steps you need to take in order to achieve that. And that's where we start to come in with advice and guidance.
Right. Just out of interest, because this is going out to women in this group, is there a difference in the attitude to financial planning, do you find, between men and women?
A lot of women, well, no, not, I would say a lot of women. Some women will take a back seat on the finances, and often I will usually get the man coming in first. But I say, I think it would be a good idea to bring in your partner, because one, they should be aware of what you own between you. And really, I don't like working in isolation of another partner. You know, I like things to be open. And three, if anything happens to you, at least your partner will know exactly what you own and where it is. So we always encourage the partner to come in, whether it's male or female.
Right.
And we will rarely work with just one person without the other. We will always keep encouraging them to bring them in. But there are some, and not necessarily older generation women, who will leave all the finances to their husband. I know one person who doesn't even have her own credit card, which I find incredible.
Yes, that's a bit scary, actually.
She just relies on her husband to pay for things that she wants.
Yeah. And presumably that's not necessarily something you would advise.
No. But having seen either single ladies or ladies who've been widowed, they're actually very astute when it comes to money.
Yeah.
If left to it, they know how to handle the money. They know a lot more than they realize. But maybe it's just, you know, the way the relationship has evolved.
Yeah.
And they've been happy to do that. Quite often we're aware that it's the woman behind the throne.
Yeah.
And we'll say, perhaps the best thing to do is go away and discuss this with your partner and then come back and tell us.
Interesting. Michaela says, I haven't had a credit card since 2004. Well, that's very impressive, Michaela. I have numerous credit cards. I wouldn't be able to manage without them.
But also that affects your credit scoring if you don't have a credit card.
Oh, really? Is your credit scoring worse if you don't have a credit card?
Yeah, because they like to see you've had credit and you've paid for it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you should sort of take out loans and use credit cards and things just to show that you can, if you like, to show the system that you can handle it. And that's really interesting. What do you think about that, Michaela? I was also going to say that most of the women in this group run their own businesses. So is there something that we need to think about in terms of including the business in financial planning?
Well, we always include the business anyway,
right?
Because that's the way you are earning money. That's the way you're earning income. And also, you need to start thinking about succession of your business in the same way as you would with a family, and what's going to happen to your business.
Right.
You know, some people have this idea that, oh, you know, my business is my pension, without any real idea of whether they can actually sell it, what they might get for it, or anything like that. So they just need a reality check on what the business is worth.
Yes, and you can do that for them, or
yeah,
are there easy ways to find out, or is it quite a complex
no, there
process?
are quite easy ways to find out, and you can go into various like Companies House and what have you, and you can compare yourself to other sectors,
right,
and see what the average valuation for a particular sector and size of your business you would get.
Oh right, that's interesting. Yeah, so if you are thinking about your business being your pension, presumably through selling it, I mean, that will be the way it will become your pension, presumably.
But how you sell it is, there are umpteen ways of selling it.
Right.
You can have a management buyout, you can have an employee ownership trust, you can sell it to an outsider, you can have an equity investor.
Right, but the idea is that you get a substantial sum of money out of your business that, sort of is the basis for any kind of pension pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with our planning, we can say to some business owners, this is what you actually need to maintain your lifestyle. This is the price you need from your business at this particular point in time in order to maintain your lifestyle for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So Michaela has come back and said, I have no idea about credit ratings. We cut up all of our credit cards when we left the UK in 2004 as a commitment to always live within our means. What would you say to that, Marlene?
Well, she's left the UK, hasn't she? So it doesn't really matter.
Right. Okay, yes, Michaela is in Portugal. So, but still, I mean, everybody needs a pension, a way of living beyond earning eventually.
Right. And as I explained in my first book, Boomers Redefining Retirement, a lot of people now, when they retire, don't change their lifestyle that much. If they've always gone on nice holidays, had a very nice home, decent car, what have you, they want to maintain that.
Yeah.
They've got a social life where they eat out, go to the theatre, buy nice clothes. They want to maintain that. It's gone as the traditional idea of, hang up your working boots and put on your slippers and sit in your rocking chair.
Yeah, quite. Absolutely.
And some people are working much longer, even if it's only part-time.
Yeah.
And some people, older people, have gone off and set up another business.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in my experience, a lot of women start businesses when their children leave home,
right.
and do things that they really want to do, and sort of start a whole new life from there, which is interesting. So yes, I guess at that point you also should be thinking about planning and cascading.
That's right. And the important thing about cascading is, as I said in the book, a lot of my clients come and talk to me about passing on wealth because they're unsure about how and when to do it. And so we have a great discussion around that. And then they get to talk about the personalities of their children.
Right.
Well, so we'd like to give money to Sarah, but if we give it to John, he'll just fritter it away.
So that's very interesting. What do you do about that? When, I mean, how controlling do you think that parents should be of the money they give or leave to their children? Because they may be giving it within their own lifetime as well. I mean, it's not necessarily just after you die. They may be making money over while they're still alive, obviously. How difficult is it to accommodate different types of children?
Well, the one thing I do is I don't tell them what to do.
No.
I get them to talk about their family, about their children, and what it is they want to do. Ideally, what is it they want to do? And then I can come up with some options for them, and they can choose from those options. Yeah. So they might say, yes, we'll give 5,000 to Sarah, but Johnny, maybe we put 5,000 in trust for him, and we can give it to him as and when he needs it. And so there's a measure of control over his money, not necessarily with Sarah. So it's the same when it comes to things like powers of attorney, when people are choosing the powers of attorney, and often they choose their children. And so again, I have a discussion with them. Do your children get on?
Yeah.
Because at some stage, these two children are going to have to make a decision about your money or your health and welfare. And if they don't get on, how are they going to make decisions easily? So there are fairly sensitive discussions about that, particularly also if it's a second marriage and the second partner is not the children's mother. So again, they tell me what it is they would like to achieve ideally, and then I give them options. Well, you could do this, but the implications of doing this are X, or you could do this and the implications are Y, and they decide.
Right. Very, very interesting. Okay, so I know that you have 6 steps to creating a clear and detailed family wealth plan. So would you take us through those 6 steps, Marlene?
Yes, I can tell you them in my sleep.
Right.
So the first one, as I've already mentioned, is about determining your objectives, and that would be quite a major part of our first meeting with somebody, is getting them. And we surprise people because they come in waving pensions at us or investments and think we're going to talk about them because that's what that's what their expectation is. And we put those to one side and say, right, tell me. And when I mentor financial planners, I say, don't record that meeting because it's off-putting. But put your pen down, don't make notes, and give your full attention to that person. Because if you don't, or if you interrupt, psychologically, they're going to think they're not really interested. They're asking the question, but they're not that interested. So absolutely full attention. Tell me, what is it you would like to achieve as a result of working with me? And if we had the discussion 3 years from now, what is it you would like to have achieved personally and professionally? Then I let them talk.
Right. That must be a very interesting discussion to have with each new client that you work with.
Yeah, and they've all got, sometimes they're very similar, sometimes they're quite different. The husband and wife might have different ideas, but the whole point is to encourage them to keep talking until we have some objectives, and then I can write them down and feed them back to them. So you're telling me this is what you want to achieve, and they confirm or negate that. So that's the first stage, and then we have to gather all the information. So there's all the hard facts, about what they own. And then we write off to all the providers. So if they've got pensions or investments, we write off to all the providers and get the full information, the most up-to-date information about everything. And they have homework to do. So they have to fill in that expenditure questionnaire.
Yeah.
We've got things like risk profiles, and we want to know what the attitude to risk is and things like that, their knowledge and experience with investments. We send off estate pension forecasts. So we've got a full picture of everything. So that's gathering all the information. And then we do all the analysis of that. And then we can pick up any anomalies. And we put this all together in a cash flow. And that is a particular cash flow that we use, that's used in the financial planning community. And it will show us if they will run out of money or not at certain stages in their life. It will show us if one of them dies, if they're in a partnership, has the other one got enough to survive on? It will show us if one of them needs care now or has long-term disability and can't work, can they afford it? And it will show us whether if they both die tomorrow, is there a tax on the estate?
Right. And can you do this yourself, or will you always need an advisor to work through this with you?
You would really. You can try and do it yourself, but the software that we use includes all the taxes.
Right.
So you'd have to have some pretty good spreadsheets.
It's more complex than just a sort of back of an envelope kind of thing.
Yeah. And also it's knowing all the questions to ask the providers, because the information that the providers send out to you, the consumer, is very different and very basic from the information that we ask for. Right. So we get much fuller information than you will have had. Particularly so, for example, I had a couple in a civil partnership who she was in a very good scheme, a defined benefit final salary scheme. and she was looking to retire. And we recommended she retain the scheme because it was a defined benefit scheme. This was very many years ago, before the latest scandal. And we thought the usual pension when she died that would go to a partner would be 50% on her death. But when we looked at it more closely, because she was in a civil partnership, the trustees had said 25%.
Oh, so, right. So there's a big difference, or can be, between being married, being in a civil partnership, and in fact not being married at all.
Oh yes,
yeah. So would you advise people who are living together but unmarried, actually, even if they don't particularly believe in the institution of marriage or have their own personal reasons for not wanting to be married, for financial reasons, would you advise them to get married?
Well, I have done. I've got a couple of clients who I've had for many years. They're a lovely couple, and they keep complaining about the inheritance tax. Was one of them going to pay when the other dies?
Right.
And and I just said, look, Chris, I keep telling you, one way around this is to get married. They haven't got any children, so in some ways they're not, but the tax will go to whoever survives the other.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get married at first, and she didn't, and then she did and he didn't, and then they agreed that they would get married, but they couldn't decide how and when and everything else. So at this last meeting she said, we're going on a cruise, and I said, well, that's the best time to get married. You can get married on a cruise. So I sent her a booklet about getting married on a cruise. Right. I haven't seen her since. It was a bit of a
that would be interesting.
But it'd be great if she came back and said we actually got married on our cruise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I have said to people, one way around this is to get married. So once we've analysed and we've researched everything, got everything together, the next step is the strategy meeting, where we invite the people back and they go through it with us on a screen, and they can see it for themselves, and they can see all the figures, and there's very nice graphics and everything else. And then they can say to us, well, what if we did this, and what if we did that? And we can change it for them, and they can see then. Or if there's some anomaly or a shortfall, we can say, well, if you did this, and we can show the improvements on another screen. So they fully engage with it, and that's the good thing about it. It's not something that's being shoved at them. They can fully engage with it. It's theirs, and they own it, because it's all about them. It's their assets, their money that they earn, their standard of living. And so in the end, we make various recommendations, and then we look at the products. So the products are a means to an end. That's right at the end. So the next stage, the fifth stage, would be putting together a written financial plan. And our clients have a full financial plan, but we'll have gone through everything with them, and they will have seen how it all affects them. So when they get the written plan, which is fairly hefty, they know what's inside there. And I think the third page, it says, will the recommendations achieve your objectives, in big letters, so they can see that for themselves. Right. And then the sixth stage is the review, where they come back and we start the process all over again. Oh, really? How soon does the review happen? I mean, like at least once a year, but they can come back in if, particularly say somebody's retiring and they're not sure how things are going to pan out. If they're drawing down from a pension, and I say, well, you can come back in 6 months if you're not sure, and we can. Or somebody says, I'm being made redundant, what effect will that have on my plans? So we can work that through. Or I've decided to give 20,000 to my daughter to help her buy a house, or whatever. Does that affect it? But when I say we start the process all over again, they're sent their figures in advance, which they update for us. I see. They come back, we do all the research, we've got up-to-date information on all their investments and everything else. And at the meeting, we then ask them, what is it you want to achieve in the next 12 months? So they might say, we want to buy a car, we want to have the kitchen revamped, how much is that going to cost? And we get them to cost it out, and we put it all in the plan to see how it affects them.
Right, that's fascinating. So Angela Hooper has said that you've given her excellent financial advice and that she's achieved valuable personal goals with you. So that's really nice to hear. And Michaela has said that this talk has made her realize that perhaps she needs to be more focused and motivated about financial planning. But she asks, does the cost of engaging a financial advisor depend on your assets? So the more money you have, the more complicated and expensive it is. She says, I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant on this subject.
Some of it can. Our process is that the first meeting and going on to the strategy meeting, you pay for that at a fixed rate. So we charge a fixed fee for that.
Yeah. So that doesn't matter if you're.
And that depends on the complexity.
Okay,
so
right.
If you come to us and you haven't got any cash or savings and you just want to do some planning, it could cost as little as £475.
Right.
But if you come to us and you've got 2 or 3 defined benefit schemes, you've got 4 or 5 personal pensions, you've got life cover, you've got investments, then that could cost up to £2,000 to £3,000. So it depends on the complexity, basically. Right. After that, when you've been through the strategy meeting and you've had the financial plan, you paid your fee, you can walk away. And that's what I say to clients. You can walk away at that stage. But most people say, what do we do now once they've seen the strategy on the screen? And the next stage is a full written plan with all the recommendations and guidelines and the analysis and everything goes in it.
Right.
And then we cost it. Now, it's normally on percentage of assets, but if the clients don't have any assets, we will charge them a fixed fee.
Okay, that's brilliant. No, Michaela says, thanks. That answers my question well. So Marlene, you are going to be kind enough to offer some initial free calls with anyone who's listening to this, either now or on the recording. What would that involve? Where would they get in touch with you? Is it through your website, which we've already put into a link in the comments? And how would that work? I mean, obviously, it will be a quick sort of initial review, I guess, to talk to you.
Yeah, so it's either can be for people who are listening in now, or it can be for their parents or grandparents. I'd have maybe a quick call with them just to ascertain what it is they want to do and assess their situation. So it probably only be a brief telephone call to see whether they then want to go on to a fuller meeting, what we call the discovery meeting, and we cover the cost of that. So they don't lose anything if they want to go through a full discovery meeting. And it's at that meeting when we explain what we can do and whether it's worth working with us and what the cost is. And then the client can say either it's not, I think it's too expensive, or it's not for me, or yes, we'd like to proceed.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds brilliant. So where is the best place to get in touch with you?
It's best to contact the team at Unique Family Wealth, and Unique is spelled UNIQ.co.uk.
Okay, we will put that in the links too. No, that's great, and that's a terrific offer. And obviously, your book spells out in much greater detail your 6 steps to creating the family wealth plan, cascading your wealth.
Well, yeah.
Yep, fantastic. Yes, so and clearly we'll put the link for that in as well. So that's absolutely brilliant. That's so enlightening and interesting. And I do think it's something that a lot of people, and I don't know if it's particularly women or not, but really kind of resist doing because it just feels too sort of either too complicated or too scary, or you don't want to look into the future too far, but it's clearly a really important and actually really kind of useful and a really good piece of self-development to do, I guess.
Well, yes, because at least you've got a handle on things. You've got an idea about what you own and earn and what you're worth, and it can give you great reassurance and security moving forward.
Absolutely. Oh, Marlene, just before we go, you told me a really lovely story before we started this about the family in Wales who won a competition of yours. Just tell us that quickly.
Yeah, so we had a competition on Facebook about the best family photograph, and the winner was picked randomly, and the people who won it lived in the outskirts of Cardiff in a terraced house, and the husband worked in Bristol, so the commute was quite long. She worked in food, and she talked about mainly changing her career and doing something different and where they might live. And eventually they decided to move to Abergavenny, which was nearer for the husband to get to Bristol. And they had quite a lot of land, really nice property. And she has now started and her own business in doing organic jams, chutneys, foods and creams and serums. She's just started it. She's doing really well. And last year I received a bouquet of flowers from her and a nice little card, and I rang her because it was completely out of the blue. And I said, why have you sent me these? And she said, oh, I just walked out into the garden this morning and I thought you helped us to do all this. And so she sent me the flowers, which was really, really lovely thing to do. And they didn't have a lot of wealth. We just helped them with the planning and to get them to have some clarity on how they wanted to spend the rest of their lives, and now they're doing it. So
that's brilliant. That's a really, really good example of how helpful it can be, whether or not you're wealthy, but how it actually really is can be a life-changing piece of work to do.
Yes, and one thing I'd like to say, last thing, is that very few women come into financial planning because I think they're put off by the alpha male salesy type of and the stereotypical image of financial advisors. And yet the women who have come into financial services are really, really successful because particularly if they do lifestyle financial planning, because they're far more intuitive, they've got a more conversational style with people, and their understanding of family issues serves them well. So I just wish more women would come into financial services because they do very well at it.
Oh, well, that's really interesting to know. So anybody who's looking for another way forward, or maybe can you do it even as a sort of side hustle? Can you do it part-time if you have another business, or is that too?
It's a bit difficult.
It's a bit difficult. It should be
yeah.
But if anyone's looking for a change of scene on the work front, yes, I'm sure that I can imagine that. Well, I'd probably feel happier by consulting with a woman than certainly some of the men I've encountered in financial circles. So yes, that's a really good point. Marlene, thank you so much. You've given us such a lot to think about and so much valuable insight and information. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for doing our lunchtime learning session today, and I'm sure some people will be in touch with you. Thanks a lot, Marlene.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Lucy.